to American Riviera Bank's Regional Pulse. This is Michelle Martinich, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of the bank. Today I have Nancy Martz with me. Nancy is the Executive Director of Apples to Zucchini Cooking School. She's been involved with nonprofits for almost 20 years, helping start 3 nonprofits, sitting on several boards, and volunteering much of her time to causes that matter. Welcome, Nancy. It's so good to see you.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
And we're also friends, so that makes this fun too.
Yes.
But I do know a little bit about the apples to zucchini, but I don't know the whole story. So can we start there, Nancy?
Sure. So we just celebrated our 5th birthday 2 weeks ago. I know, very exciting. Let's see. I started hatching the idea in 2015. My older son was in 6th grade at Marymount, and they did a program, part of the UN World Food Day, if you're familiar with the $1.50 challenge, where it's about food insecurity, poverty, hunger. And so the idea is, what would it feel like to eat only $1.50's worth of food in a day? And it's in the schools, it's partly a math program, but it also opens up this conversation. So I was sitting with him kind of working on, coming up with a menu that would feed him for the day. And I thought a little bit farther beyond that and said, okay, if I'm a family of 4, what does this look like? That's $42 a week to feed your family.
Wow.
It's not impossible. It's not impossible if you know how to cook and you know what to buy. If you do not know how to cook, it's impossible. People might think, oh, but the $1.50 menu. Okay, you just bought 1 hamburger and maybe a side of French fries. That's maybe a meal.
And no nutrition in that.
And no nutrition, exactly. So I started thinking, okay, if you don't know how to cook, how are you doing this? And at the same time, my family was volunteering at the food bank on the Saturday weekends where we would sort the food with other families. We'd have these big, huge bins of produce. And every once in a while, there was sort of a mystery produce, like maybe dragon fruit or something. And somebody would say, what is this? And somebody else would say, well, I think it's this. I think somebody could Google it. Okay, so imagine you're a family and you get some food donated from Unity Shop or the food bank or all these other amazing organizations in Santa Barbara. And maybe it's not even mystery food. Maybe it's a leek or a turnip.
Those are mysteries to me.
Those are mysteries too. All right, come to A to Z and we'll show you what to do with this.
Yeah.
So you get this produce, you get something. Maybe you don't have Google. Maybe you don't have internet at home, so you can't look it up. Maybe you can look it up and the recipe says to dice and saute. If you don't know what dice and saute are, you're no better off. So I realized that what it's going to take for families to feed themselves good nutrition and really affordably is that they need to learn how to cook. Did you have home ec when you were in high school?
I did. I remember learning to make lemon meringue pie.
Super useful. But
I've never made lemon meringue pie since then, so yeah.
But you had it, and you and I are about the same age, and I survey other people our age, and I would say about 50% of us had home ec and 50% of us did not. I did not have home ec. We had like a home ec classroom at our school, but I think they had already phased out home ec and had replaced it with typing. So we have this whole generation and generations coming down that never learned how to cook. So now we've got, maybe you saw your mom, maybe your dad, maybe your grandmother cooking, but today's kids, if they're not even seeing their parents cooking, they have absolutely no idea. But we decided that teaching the kids to cook was going to be the way to go rather than teaching the adults to cook for 2 reasons. Kids have a little bit more time on their hands. They're done with school at 2:30 and we're not done with work until 5 if we're lucky. Also, if the kid comes home and says, Mom, we have to make kale chips, you're going to be like, yeah, we're making kale chips. If you come home and go, kids, I learned how to make kale chips this weekend, they're going to be like, right, good luck with that, Mom. So when the kids come home and say things like, I never knew I liked carrots more than pasta, mango is my favorite fruit, the parents, they'll run out and buy carrots, they'll buy the mango, they'll they will feed this love of cooking and this curiosity and this experimentation. So those were the seeds that kind of got planted in me, and I thought, let's teach kids how to cook. And so I looked around town to see if somebody was already doing it and I could just join them. Do I really need to start a nonprofit? But nobody was doing just that.
Yeah, there's some cooking classes after school. I know at Peabody we have one, but it was really just those kids, and it was pretty basic.
Right, and
it was better than that.
And a lot of the classes are baking. There's nothing wrong with baking, but that's not 3 square meals. That's not really understanding nutrition and focusing on affordability and making meals. So we decided to start it, and the first place that I went was the Santa Barbara Foundation, and they were our fiscal sponsor until we became an independent 501c3 a little over a year ago. So that's the beginning. That's our origin story.
That's so cool. I know that knowing how to cook is so important because my mom did not like cooking. Therefore, I'm not a big fan of cooking. Totally good doing the dishes. And thankfully for me, instead of a cooking class, I chose well, and my husband loves to cook. So the kids see him cooking, and we see all of that happening, and there's a lot of talk about eating vegetables and balanced foods. But yes, if it was left to me, there'd be a lot of takeout. We would not be able to eat off $1.50 a day, and we would be lacking a lot of nutrition. So definitely value all of that.
Well, it's funny because my mom didn't like to cook, but I decided I want to eat something better than this, and I want to have control over what I'm eating. So I read, this was before, I guess Julia Child was on, but it was on PBS when it wasn't streaming on demand, and it was before the Food Network. So I would read cookbooks and magazines and taught myself how to cook. And so in high school, I was actually cooking for the family several nights a week. So I mean, it was often shake and bake or hamburger helper, but it was something. And then I would learn how to improvise and experiment. I was just a very curious person in the kitchen.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
And I also agree. The more exposure you get, the better. I am loving these free lunches right now for the kids because I've got my kids, my little one brings home lunches every day from school, and it's a no risk situation. If she comes home and she doesn't like it, she's home, and she is finding so many new things that she likes, and that I love opening up their palates and that no risk. So how many kids and how many families are you touching now with the program?
So since the pandemic began, we have been teaching. We did summer camp this summer. We ended up with 16 kids this summer. It should have been 48, but we were glad that we were at least able to do it live and in person. And now we've been doing outdoor classes after school since September, and we're teaching 25 kids per term. Normally it would be 60, so our numbers are all down, but we're still teaching these kids, and it's really it's great to see the progression. We've got a couple of kids that have been with us since the summer, and they keep coming back, which is great because we can really see their skills develop and their tastes and their curiosity. And if we're doing something that feels a little repetitive to them, we've already made salsa. That's fantastic. Can you teach the class how to do it? And then they'll kind of step up and take some leadership. So that's been really exciting. So yeah, we've got 25 kids right now. We're at 2 different campuses. We're using the garden at Gardens Food Academy.
Okay.
We have the kitchen there, but actually I think we went back in the kitchen this week because we're getting closer to the red tier. And then we also use the garden at Pilgrim Terrace over on Modoc. They have a beautiful urban garden. They have tower gardens. They have a community garden. So it's really neat that the kids can kind of see all the different ways that produce grows. And we're able to kind of go pick a carrot and show them how, well, these are vines and these are roots and these aren't ready yet and these are overripe, just to really see that whole process is neat. And then, like I said, we have our garden at Garden Street Academy, so the kids are actually planting there, and we'll be harvesting And then we'll be doing a spring break camp, and fingers crossed, we're doing summer camp as well. So in a normal circumstance, we would be having about 60 kids in a semester. And then we're also starting to add programs with other nonprofits. We've been teaching at Safe House, which is it's a small, short-term residential treatment home for young women who've been removed from commercial sex trafficking circumstances. So we actually go into their home, into their kitchen, and teach them how to cook twice a month. We sit down, we bring our own beautiful tablecloths, and we sit down and we have a conversation, and we learn how to pass the potatoes and wait for everyone to be served before we eat, and all that etiquette. That's for everybody, not just for the girls in the treatment home. This is what we do in all of our classes. And then after we're done eating, the kids do all the dishes and put everything away.
I read about that. I love that you're teaching that food is about fellowship and conversation. It's not just about who can shove it into their body as fast as they can. That to take the time and enjoy the meal. I love that. I thought cotillion.
Right, right.
Cotillion.
Well, we talk about feeding your soul, not just your body.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so valuable, especially when you're working with families and kids. That this is a new experience, and if you're reaching out to these shelters to learn that there's ways to
Fellowship and ways to be together and to let the body and the mind come together.
Yeah, so we're reaching out to we're talking to Noah's Anchorage and Domestic Violence Solutions and Family Care Network, and we'd love to get into Transition House. If you're out there, Transition House, we'd love to work with you, and My Home at Artisan Court, and Boys and Girls Club and Girls Inc. We want to reach all the kids and all the teens in Santa Barbara. We also work with the library. Mostly what we've been doing with them is that's our one virtual program. Once a month, we do a story time where they read a story to the little kids, and then we do a recipe that kind of goes hand in hand with the story time. So that's been really fun. We're hoping to work with their teens once they're back on site. So yeah, really for us, the sky's the limit. We want to reach everybody, but what's really important to us is that the kids are these are hands-on cooking classes. We don't stand up in front of 100 kids and do a demo. We are really putting knives in their hands and showing them how to slice and dice and mince and julienne, and how to saute and boil and roast, and sear and brown and mix and fold and all of those things. And then we sit down together. So most of our classes are limited to only 12 kids so that we can really have a manageable conversation. And doing the dishes is very funny. We'll always get that kid who goes, I already washed my dishes. I understand that you washed your plate and your fork, but what about the pot and the skillet and the serveware? Oh, okay, fine. And then they storm off to the sink. But it's just that reminder of you're part of a community. And, somebody else maybe washed your dish and your fork because they're doing the plates and the forks. And so now you can fold up the chairs and things like that. So just learning to be part of a community and have that responsibility. We think that's, we know that it's really, really important. There was just an article today in the New York Times about the importance of kids having chores. And there's so many of these articles, the importance of kids doing chores. It's really important.
Even though they complain, they do feel good about it. They're part of something, and in the end, they can see they're part of something. They feel valued. We might have to fight them about it, but in the end, yeah, I agree. There's appreciation for it.
Yeah, they realize that this is what adults do. This is what it means to grow up. And if my parents are doing everything for me, I'm never going to grow up. And they make that connection.
I love that you take the fear out of some of the words. All those words you just went through, braising and folding and stirring and sifting, that can be so scary. Like I can't even think of half of them when you read a recipe. So the sooner that becomes part of vocabulary, it's not scary, which is very empowering. I love that. So these are great organizations, but how are you funding this?
So there's two different ways we are funded. One is through program fees. So all of our after-school programs and our summer camps, we charge families a market rate. It's similar to what they would be paying for any other after-school or summer camps. We are generous with scholarships. Anyone who asks for a scholarship gets one. We just say, tell us what you can pay for. And So that brings in about 30% of our income. And then we're funded by nonprofits and businesses. We're funded by American Riviera Bank. You guys, I think you're the only organization that has funded us every single year since we began.
Well, we do like to eat.
You do like to eat. And so when people see that you support us, then there's sort of that good housekeeping seal of approval. So we've got funding from businesses like you. Once we left the nest of the Santa Barbara Foundation and we weren't a fiscal sponsorship fund anymore, they were able to fund us. So they've given us actually 2 grants this year, one to help cover salaries because of the income losses that we've suffered through COVID. And also they've given us a grant to help us do outreach and communicate our message to a broader audience. And then just general fundraising. So other nonprofits and family and friends, if people work for a company that does matching donations to their gifts. So there's lots of ways that we're getting funded. Also, most of our food costs are covered. The farmers market has been tremendously generous. They provide all of our produce. Basically, he just gives us tokens, and we're able to go and choose what we want. So we're not getting. There's nothing wrong with getting the leftovers at the end of the day, but when we're going in, we're choosing. Ooh, I want these yellow peppers and these red peppers, and this week we need really big onions, and next week we're going to need tiny little shallots. We get whatever we want. It's just been so amazing, and then we're able to share that message with the kids. Don't forget to go to farmers market. And with our summer camp 2 years ago, before the COVID, we were able to do a field trip to the Friday morning farmers market, and Sam Edelman, the director, met us and talked to the kids about farming and the farming community and sustainability and where all this comes from and why it's important to have that in our community. We also are supported by Grocery Outlet. They have been tremendously generous. They give us $100 gift cards, which if you've been to Grocery Outlet, $100
That goes a long
gift
way.
card lasts forever. It's amazing.
Now the song's in my head, just so you know.
Yeah,
Say that.
the song's in
Jingle.
your head. But they've been so generous. But we get olive oil, we get Bragg's apple cider vinegar, we get beans. Beans are a tremendously affordable food, super versatile. They have all different kinds of beans. We get maseca for when we make our tortillas. They have a great selection of dried fruits and nuts, which we use for our granolas and our oatmeal and our energy bites. They have oats. They have a lot of highly processed foods, but they also have a lot of staple foods that are just the building blocks for all the recipes that we have. They also have produce, so if we do need something that is out of season, we can get it there. We really try to be seasonal, but it turns out that onions are not in season right now.
What?
I know. They're a summer crop, and then you put them up. You put them in your root cellar, for the winter, right? So they're not growing right now. You can get shallots, but not onions. So when we made our carrot soup last week, we needed onions, so we went to Grocery Outlet. So they've been amazing. And then Trader Joe's gives us once a year. We get a small donation, which is great because they also have such fun and exciting, different sauces and cool ingredients and stuff like that. So those are all of our different funding sources. And then also we're supported by California Walnuts, the National Honey Board. So we're getting ingredients and recipes from those organizations as well.
Well, Nancy, I am not surprised. You are very good at getting the word out there and networking, so I am not surprised to hear that you guys have so much support. I love that.
And it's varied and diverse.
Yeah, and I do so much of it because I'm super curious. Like, wow, walnuts, tell me more, and it was really funny 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, when we did our summer camp that was pre-COVID. We had amazing field trips every day. We went to Pacific Pickle Works and we got to make our own pickles.
Fun.
We went to Trader Joe's and got to go behind the scenes, which is so exciting. We went to the pastry kitchen at the Biltmore. I mean, it was amazing. We went to the fish market, to their wholesale shop, and got to see behind the scenes how they do everything. And I remember one of the dads came to pick up his daughter from camp, and he said, "These field trips are amazing. How do you get to do this?" And I said, "I just call these places and say, I love what you're doing." There's a place here in town called Food Tools. It's a company that builds machines that will specifically cut your lemon meringue pie, your brownies, your whatever it is you're making. You say, all right, this is the sheet I'm making, and I'm going to need these things in 2x2 squares. Okay. And then if you want that little paper that's in between the slices, they do that. So I called and I said, I would love to do a tour for our summer camp. And he said, do you know what we do? I said, yeah, you make these tools that cut food. And he said, yeah, you know exactly what we do. And I went and visited. It was amazing. We could not squeeze it into our completely packed week. But it's those kinds of things where I read about something and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to go. The kids would love it. But it's because I would love it.
So you need an adult foodie camp.
I do. You're not the first one to say this. People ask, and we'd love to do adult classes. We just don't have the time right now, but it's absolutely on the list. But yes, these kinds of places, like make your own pickles, kind of peel the curtain back and see,
I'm picturing a beer and pickles tour.
For sure.
And
sure.
Yeah, there's a lot here, Oh my goodness. That would be really fun. And educational, because you're right, there's so many things that we don't know and questions to be asked, and sometimes we're less afraid to ask them as adults. So,
yeah. Well, and also the truth is I can sort of hide behind, well, I need to do this for summer camp, when in fact but it would be kind of weird to call and say, can I just come visit you? I think they would think that was weird, but when I want to bring a bunch of kids. But I truly want to share these things. I am so curious about everything. Sort of, what's behind the scenes.
So speaking of sharing, I know that you have international experience. You packed up the whole family and you guys moved to Austria for over a year.
For 2 years.
Been gone for 2 years, and that was very recently. And then in your past, you also lived there when you were younger, right?
Yeah, my mom is from there.
So you bring that into the experience and into the menu?
Yes, we have done we've done a lot of international cooking, and I talk a lot about it's not just the food and the recipes, but the experience. And for example, in most other countries besides America, people stay at the table longer and they linger. I was just listening to an interview with Selma Hayek, and she was talking about that. And the word they use in Mexico is sobremesa, which is on the table or at the table. You literally stay at the table after dinner and talk. And with an Austrian mother, that's how I was raised. We would just sit at the dinner table and talk about our days. My parents, they were in business together, so they would talk about things that were going on at work, and my brother and I would listen. And you just learn so much about that. And it's important for the parents and the kids to be sitting at the table together. So often the parents will feed their kids at 5:30 because they're starving, and then they don't eat until 8 o'clock at night. Give your kids a snack and maybe eat at 7. Obviously when the kids are very, very little, that's not going to work. But if you are feeding your kids early because they're really little, sit down and eat with them. And then if you want to have a second meal with your spouse and a glass of wine later. But this idea of bringing the kids to the table and taking that time. I'm actually reading a book right now. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it's specifically about, because my husband and I were having this conversation. Why do we eat so fast in America? Why do restaurants turn their tables so fast? They do their reservations and their booking with the expectation of an hour and a half max for a party of 2 and 2 hours at the table for a party of 4 or 6. And in Europe and in Mexico and in South America, when you make a reservation, that is your table for the night. Or when we were living in Austria, there was this place on the lake where we lived, and if you booked it for lunch or brunch, it was yours. So this book is, I'm still early in it, but um, it has to do, it even goes back to furniture. It wasn't common for the colonists to have a dining room table, and a dining room was a luxury. If you're building, think about it, you're building that house by yourself with your own tools and your own hands. Are you really going to have a room over there in the corner that only gets used for 2 hours a day?
Interesting.
Right? So I don't know that my little cooking school is going to be able to turn the tide in this country to slow down our meals, but if I can at least influence our families and our students to just sit and linger, um, even 15 minutes, I find like that's how much time we usually end up taking in a regular class. And it doesn't seem very long. 15 minutes does not seem, kids are done. They're done eating and they're running around the soccer field. And then I'll have one kid who just will sit there and chit chat with me. And I look at my watch and I'm like, really? It's only been 15 minutes. But that can even be enough time for a conversation. But if you're out with your friends, linger. You don't need to order the minute you sit down. And um, that's the community. That's the fellowship that we're talking
It drives
about.
me crazy when my kids need to hop up right away. I was like, can you just sit down? Once it's time for dinner, let's just sit. And if you forgot a drink, I told you 7 times to get a drink, and now we're gonna sit here. Sorry, it's time to sit here. Um, yeah, but it does take perseverance from everybody. We're just gonna sit.
They get used to it.
They do.
They get used to it. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
It is good. I know sometimes we even say, okay, well, we can play a card game while we sit here. Just something
Absolutely.
to get
Everyone to linger a little bit longer, because of course anytime you're around and you start playing a game, conversations happen and change, and it's a great gathering spot. Anyways, so now
How I am curious, how did you keep this moving forward when you are on the other side of the ocean?
I had a great COO who kept things running here in California. We had, at the time, it was just the after school classes. We hadn't started branching out yet to the nonprofits. It was a vision, it was a dream, but with just her here running it, we didn't have the capacity. We have great chef educators, so when I say she was running it, she wasn't necessarily teaching all the classes. We have chef educators and volunteers who would then run the classes. So she kept it going here, and while I was in Austria, I was teaching classes at my kids' school. I was teaching after school classes, and then I was invited into to help with a 10th grade nutrition class. So that was exciting to actually get to work more in the school setting and get to work with high school students. In our second year, I was finally able to recruit some high school students to take the after school class. Before that, it had been the younger kids, but I had a 10th grader, and my nephew was in 11th grade over there, and then I had friends who were seniors, and I made the pitch to them, you guys are going to be going off to college. You need to learn this. And they said, oh my gosh, you're right. So they joined the class and then recruited their friends. And the class with the high school students was really, really fun. We were just contacted by a company that's going to be doing a summer camp here in Santa Barbara. They're not a Santa Barbara company. They're from Canada, but they are doing a camp this summer at a local college campus, and they want to incorporate cooking 2 hours a day. And they found us online, and I said, we really, really, really want to teach high school kids. We love high school kids. So they're often so busy. So if anybody out there is listening and you've got high school kids and you want to put them in a group, contact us. They get it, that light bulb of, oh my gosh, I'm leaving the house and my parents aren't gonna be going to the grocery store.
yeah.
I'm not gonna just open the cupboard and sesame oil and soy sauce. You gotta go find all this yourself. So that's exciting.
They know a little bit more about what they like and what they're wanting to know how to cook too.
Yeah.
So right now with the elementary school kids,
That you're serving with apples to zucchinis?
Right now it's elementary. We've got 1st through 3rd graders, 4th through 6th graders, and then we also have we call them our littles. It's 4-year-old and 5-year-old. TK in kindergarten. It's a pod class. We've got 2 pod classes, so that was something we started with COVID, is that if people had groups that they wanted to stay with, we let them create their own pods, and then we have classes that are open to the public. We've got spring break camp coming up. That's going to be the first 3 days of spring break. We're hoping to do summer camps. Yeah, and we're always looking for volunteers. We are a nonprofit, so high school kids can get their volunteer hours, and we're also looking just for adults who want to volunteer. And you don't need to know how to cook. You'll actually learn how to cook in all of our classes.
If you want to go on these cool tours and see these cool things, just be a volunteer.
Exactly.
And you can help, and you get to have all those experiences.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of fun.
Have you any thoughts of expanding beyond Santa Barbara? Like
people
that are reaching out to you? It's such a great concept.
Yeah, we are talking to some groups up in Santa Maria. So so that'll be a big leap in terms of capacity. One of the changes that we made due to COVID is that we are writing all the recipes and all the lesson plans and doing all the grocery shopping. And basically the chef educator shows up and it's all ready to go. Whereas before that, each chef educator could choose his or her own recipe. We would give them grocery store gift cards and they would do their own shopping. But in order to kind of streamline everything, we decided to kind of bring it all in-house. And it's great because now we have more quality control and we know exactly what's being made each week. And we can also convey other messages. So for example, when we made walnut chorizo with lettuce cups and vegan sour cream, we were able to then have a lesson on nut nutrition. Whereas when the chefs were making their own things each week, there was never sort of that backup lesson as well. So that's been really neat. So if we move up to Santa Maria, we'll need to figure out how to deliver. Yeah. But I'm really excited. I grew up in Santa Maria. I went to high school up there. A lot of people from my high school are still in Santa Maria, and so they're the people that I've picked up the phone and called and talked to, and they're really excited. So I would be thrilled to be able to branch out up there. And then we're also looking into Carpinteria, which does not feel nearly as far away. The capacity of getting classes down in Carpinteria won't be very difficult. It's just a matter of finding the right partners and figuring out.
And the space. You've got to find the right space to have everybody
in. Well, and the great thing is, even before COVID, we were teaching outdoors. We have pop-up kitchens that we bring to venues, and we have everything we need. We have knives and cutting mats and stoves and pots and pans and beautiful serveware. We have beautiful serveware from Italian Pottery Outlet. So when we set this table,
that's awesome.
We are setting a gorgeous table, and it really sets the tone. Like, we're going to sit here, back to what we were saying. We're going to sit here. We are going to enjoy this. We are going to put a napkin on our lap and pass this beautiful platter of yummy food, and it just really it elevates the meal. So we've been able to teach outdoors. Indoors is often a lot easier, but outdoors definitely has its benefits. And whenever possible, we love to take the food outside and have, sit at a picnic table, even if we've been inside at the kitchen. That's what we do at Garden Street Academy. Over the summer, we were able to be in the kitchen a couple of hours a day, but we still took all the food outside to the picnic tables with our tablecloths and all that lovely stuff. So finding venues is not as hard as people think. They think, oh, well, you have to have a commercial kitchen. I don't have one of those. That's okay. Just give me a patio. We're fine.
That's so cool. Well, I have one last question for you. So here you are today on our podcast, but I understand you are launching or have recently launched your own podcast. What Are You Hungry For? Right?
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Yes. So we've just been having these amazing conversations with people, and we decided we really want to share them. And I feel like in COVID, we're missing things, and we're realizing what we're missing. And so the question that we've been asking is, what are you hungry for? And maybe it's a certain restaurant and a certain meal, or it's, I just want my friends back in my house again, or I want to be on an airplane and go someplace where people don't speak English. So it's what, and it could change minute by minute. You know, maybe it's I just want a good night of sleep, and then after you've had your cup of coffee, you're ready for something different. But it's just conversations about food, about cooking, about your favorite ingredients, about sharing meals and experience, about gardening, about traveling. I feel like food is a through line in so many of our experiences. Um, when we think, for example, about traveling, is it seeing the Colosseum or is it eating a pizza in Italy?
Followed by gelato.
Followed by gelato. And I would argue that the food part of the experience is just as important as the places that you're seeing. It's a part of it. We actually, when we travel, we go on food tours.
So fun.
And there's a million of them out there now, and you learn so much about the history. Just like when we were talking earlier about why in America do we sit so quickly and then we're out the door. The food of a region and the eating habits and the pace of life around that. Like in Spain, we all know they don't even start dinner until 9 o'clock. Well, why is that? Let's get curious and ask that question. So this idea of what are you hungry for? It's what are you curious about, or what do you miss, or what do you want, or what do you want to manifest in your life?
Fun. That is an exciting journey. I'm gonna have to check that one out.
Well,
Sure.
we're hoping that you'll be a guest on it.
Yeah, I heard that. I would love to. That sounds like a lot of fun. I'll have to think about it. Now that it's not just about food, this is a much broader range. I love that because of course my first thought was it talking about food and eating, but I like that it's so much more than that. That sounds fabulous. Well, thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you to our listeners for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about Apples to Zucchini Cooking School, you can visit their website at atozcookingschool.org. If you'd like to learn more about American Riviera Bank, visit us at www.americanriviera.bank. Thanks again for listening.